The city that never sleeps had grown strangely quiet. It was Christmas Eve in New York City, and a heavy snowstorm blanketed the streets, muting the usual cacophony of honking horns and bustling crowds. Central Park, usually a haven of holiday cheer, lay shrouded in an eerie stillness. The lights of the towering buildings cast long shadows over the white expanse, but something about those shadows seemed wrong. I'm John, a lifelong New Yorker, and I've seen my share of strange things. But what happened that night still makes my skin crawl. Let me tell you about it. It began just after 10 p.m. The storm was relentless, and I'd just finished my shift as a cab driver. My last passenger had been dropped off near the park, and against my better judgment, I decided to take a shortcut through it to get home. The paths were deserted, the snow muffling the crunch of my boots. But as I walked, I started to feel watched. At first, I chalked it up to exhaustion. The park was vast, and I was alone. But then I saw him, a man standing under a lamppost, dressed in a long black coat and wearing a red scarf. He didn't move, didn't even seem to breathe. He just stared. I hurried past, but when I glanced over my shoulder, he was gone, just vanished into thin air. The next person to encounter something strange was Lisa, a dog walker. She had been making extra cash taking care of pets for people out of town for the holidays. She was walking 3 dogs that night, a German Shepherd, a Yorkie, and a Labrador. The dogs, usually energetic and curious, had grown nervous, pulling at their leashes and whining. As they neared the park's frozen lake, the German Shepherd stopped dead in its tracks and growled. That's when Lisa saw her. A little girl, maybe 6 or 7, standing barefoot in the snow. Her white dress fluttered in the icy wind, but she didn't seem cold. "Are you lost, sweetheart?" Lisa called out, her voice trembling. But the girl didn't answer. She just pointed toward the woods, her eyes empty, like 2 black holes. Lisa didn't stick around. She turned and ran, dragging the dogs behind her. But as she fled, she swore she could hear faint laughter, a child's giggle echoing through the trees. The third encounter was stranger still. Marcus, a street musician, had taken refuge under a bridge to escape the storm. He was strumming his guitar softly, trying to keep warm, when he noticed a figure approaching. It was a woman, dressed in an old-fashioned coat, her face obscured by a veil. She stopped a few feet away and spoke in a voice that was barely above a whisper. "Do you know the Carol of the Bells?" she asked. Marcus nodded, uneasy. He began to play the haunting melody, but as the notes filled the air, the woman began to hum along. Her voice grew louder, more distorted, until it was no longer human. Panicking, Marcus looked up, but she was gone. Only the sound of bells remained, ringing faintly in the distance. By midnight, the police were involved. Officer Ramirez had been called to the park after a jogger reported seeing figures moving in the snow. Ramirez was skeptical but dutiful. He parked his cruiser near the park's entrance and ventured in with his flashlight. He found footprints, small and delicate, leading deeper into the park. They ended abruptly at the edge of the lake. Ramirez scanned the area, his breath visible in the freezing air. "Hello? Anyone there?" he called out. The answer came not in words, but in song. A high-pitched, eerie rendition of Silent Night echoed around him. His flashlight flickered, and for a brief moment, he thought he saw a group of figures standing on the ice. They were holding hands, their faces turned toward the sky, mouths open in silent screams, and then they were gone. By morning, the storm had passed, but the park was closed off. The official story was that the weather had caused hazardous conditions. But those of us who know the city, who've lived here long enough to feel its heartbeat, knew better. The 5 of us, me, Lisa, Marcus, Ramirez, and the jogger, connected later, sharing our stories. We all saw different things, but they all felt connected, like pieces of a dark puzzle. What was it? A ghost? A warning? Or something older? Something the city's glittering lights and towering buildings had tried to bury? I still don't know, But every Christmas Eve, I avoid the park because I can still hear it, that haunting melody, the laughter, the bells. And I can't help but wonder, who will the park call next?